Hey guys, it's been a while. So, little update on the FZ09 CP3 swap into a 22 Grom. I keep wanting to say R7, but that bike is gone. Oh, I've since sold the R7 swap Grom. It's gone to kind of get this project going. So here we're doing a FZ09 CP3 swap into a 22 Grom. Essentially, I've been waiting on parts and stuff to show up. I don't know, I don't remember where I updated y'all last, but anyways, plan on running a FZ09 radiator. Did try to use and think about using the CBR 300 radiator. Didn't work out. We got a header pipe that showed up, and then I bought a stock Grom to potentially cut that one up, but then I found a frame and these fairings and a full front suspension. So anyhow, new actual frame and plastics that we're using. And yeah, we're gonna swap this FZ09 engine in. So along with the frame, all the parts, all the suspension has been ordered. It's gonna have a full Racing Bro suspension, their heaviest springs. Did order a billet aluminum Gromfather's hub. We have to modify this because it has, I believe these are M6 or M8 bolts or studs. We are going to a M12 bolt. And so we got to machine this. Hopefully it holds together. And then we're doing a 20 mil axle on this as well, just like the R7 swap. And I did find or source a pair of OG and SF kind of Gen 1 wheels. I think they just look a little bit better than the 5 spokes. So essentially I've been waiting for all this stuff to show up. And in the meantime, I kind of figured, since I'm probably going to be doing a bunch of these, or try to continue to build these, maybe not going bigger engine size every time, but I kind of decided that it was time to invest in a couple of parts to make an actual frame jig. So that's what I did today. I got this all set up. This is 3x3 just steel tubing, and then 2x2 kind of posts. This is a kit. I forget who I ordered this from, but anyways, if you guys want to do this, super easy. You could probably do the kind of bottom clamps, which is just 4 holes 3 inches apart. I'm sorry, 3 inches apart up and down, and then 2 inches apart at the bottom. Probably make this yourself from Send Cut Send, and then just order the neck. This is kind of the piece I needed. So the idea here is that this rear kind of brace or mount will tie into the factory frame, and then this front part will hold our neck. And then with the CP3, it's not necessarily long in the front. The problem is we need to run a bigger radiator. So we are running the FZ09, and the CBR 300 is just going to be too small. So with the radiator being larger in the front, not that much of an issue like side to side, but with the header coming out, even with the engine tilted up, this is probably tilted up 20 degrees or 30 degrees, but we essentially need the radiator to come up higher. So in order to do that, we are gonna have to extend out the neck. And I was kind of hesitant towards this, but after kind of looking at it, measuring and looking at it, I decided that this is just the way to go. My biggest concern was that it was gonna look goofy, but I've seen a couple other builds now with an extended neck, and it does not look too goofy. So 3 to 4 inches, we're gonna extend it out. And then with this jig idea, this back brace is essentially gonna be permanent. It'll have little tabs so it can't move up and down. Might be actually welded all together. It'll have mounts where the factory Grom engine bolted up to, and that will hard mount the frame to this. And then in the front, get this wheel out of the way. In the front, sorry about that. In the front, this will have tabs, kind of angle iron welded to here, so that this can't fall down like into our, or out of our jig. And then we can just loosen these guys up, put a degree angle finder on it, and then extend it out once we make our cut. So kind of, this is like the rough, just setting together. I need to make my holes for the engine mounts that are there already, weld some angle iron, and then figure out maybe a base for this. The 2x4s was just kind of figured stuff out. But yeah, guys, this is kind of how it's going. This engine is quite a bit wider than the R7 engine. Obviously, this is a 3-cylinder instead of a 2-cylinder. And honestly, at this point, I'm kind of regretting this. I know a lot of people want to see like a 600cc swap, but even this being 3 cylinders is already like going to be too wide. So I believe it's 14 inches from the valve cover to the valve cover or the jug, and then this is about 10 inches from throttle body to throttle body, where the R7 was about 10 inches wide altogether. So it just was a little bit more narrow and compact. So I wish I had the R7 still or made a video of it, but so we're going to end up probably widening out the blue fairings a little bit. Hopefully not too much up at the top, but at the bottom, we are going to end up flaring those out a decent amount. That might look a little funky, but it's kind of like the way to get it done, because no one has put an engine this wide in a Grom, and if they have, they don't have any pictures or anything of it running. I mean, there was that Ducati swap, and I know the street sweeper guys got a Ducati swap. That's different. This is still wider than that. And then even the transmission case and everything is much wider and just a lot bigger than like the R7 swap or the R7 case. So a lot of stuff to do, a lot of cutting. First things first is to get the jig finished. Then on this side, you can see the frame. So we need to retain the factory gas tank mounts. So idea is probably to put a laser on here and do just a 0 degree straight cut. And then I'm gonna do, whether it be, I got it over here, whether it be some tubing or something, or if I decide to actually weld this in, depending on how sturdy everything is, I may weld in a section, probably be there, and then get it kind of tacked together. It's not gonna be final because we're gonna be cutting it off and cutting this out in the end anyways, but this is pretty much where we're gonna make our cut. Kind of retain at least the factory gas tank, and then we'll build our own mounts for the gas tank. This one will probably come up to the frame rails that come up and above. So that's kind of the plan yet. Need to finalize everything. Here you can see where I'm probably going to use some like tubing or gosh, what would you call them, like shanks or spacers, and kind of notch out the tubing, weld in a spacer. Then we will have our factory holes. That'll keep this thing from falling. And then in the front, this is pretty sturdy. But we're gonna kind of measure everything out and triangulate everything. Take the angles of the triple, maybe the angle of the frame. I don't know what we would do here. Maybe try to replicate this angle if we have to. But this should work pretty well. This is already really sturdy, and the only thing that's holding it on is this neck support right now. It's just kind of resting on those. So that's the idea. And then once we cut it, we can move it, and that guy. So yeah, that's the plan. So slow moving at first. I was gonna cut this bike up and make it work, but I just can't bring myself to cut up a running bike. So that's gonna be basically our, like factory go-to when we're trying to figure out like the angles of everything. Say if we get everything kind of tacked up, want to double check the fork angle, we have a factory bike to kind of double check everything on. So that's the FZ09 swap. It's getting there. As soon as I start cutting some stuff, and once we get this jig moved and in place, then it's basically ready to go for making the double frame rails. Then we can start cutting out the stuff in the back. We're gonna have to make our own plated rear engine mount, because we are gonna end up cutting basically all of this out, because on the CP3 the engine mount comes a decent ways back, and I want to get this engine as far back as possible. So instead of being straight here, we can gain another inch if we move it past where the factory frame starts. So this will all be welded custom. This is all going to be braced with eighth inch steel yet again, probably from top to bottom. And And then another thing I wanted to kind of update y'all on is I did order a Evil swing arm for this. It's going to be the same as the R7. It's actually larger material than the stock one's made out of, and then what the Grom or Evil arms that they just sell to the public. So it's going to have a 20 mil axle. It'll be bigger, and then it will be braced. It's going to be a 6 to 10 inch stretch. I debated going with the 8 to 10 inch stretch, but I'm going to ride this more on the street than I do the track. So I'd like it to somewhat handle right. I'm going to try my best on this one to keep pretty much close to the factory ride height. I do not like the lowered look of the 22 body work. I don't like them lowered in the back, and the handling just really takes a dump when you lower these bikes in the back. So it might sit up high. I don't have a problem with that, but it may sit up a little high, especially stretching out the rear wheel. And the final thing is I've had one person, he's kind of a troll, comment about doing a 20 mil axle in the back. That's great, but we are still limited to the 12 millimeter swing arm pivot bolt. I called Evil, tried my best to get them to make me a 20 mil front support, but they said they'd have to remake the jig, and it's just not something they're willing to do. They already told me that to do all this custom stuff, it should be a lot more expensive than, you know, posted on their website. I think it's like $700 or something to get a Evil swing arm, which, whatever, I paid way more than that for the 20 mil and the axle and everything, but that's besides the point. No one else makes them, but that is our limiting factor. So the idea is to potentially run a brace off the, maybe like a half moon. Let me get my other hand. Like a half moon brace around the front of the swing arm that'll kind of, I don't know, kind of contour it, and then weld a support plate to, or not weld it to, but make a hole and have it support the outside of this 12 mil pivot, so that hopefully we don't bend or break that. I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen, even on some of the 650 swaps, anyone break one of those. I've heard about bent axles. I don't think anyone's ever snapped an axle, but that is the limiting factor on these swaps. So just to let you know. So if you wanted to go bigger, if I wanted to do a 20 mil pivot in the front, I would have to go with a full custom setup, and I'd probably end up building it myself, and I probably can't make it straight. So it would be all kittywampus and sideways and uneven. It'd probably be more likely than not that would break than going with the Evil arm and just the 12 mil pivot. So that's the update, guys. Hope I didn't ramble too much. Check out Instagram and TikTok. I post there more often. Y'all take it easy.